Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Gauthier the ET Whisperer. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any ideas expressed by the guest, myself, or commenters may not necessarily reflect the same opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Enlightenment, defined. It is the state of giving or receiving greater knowledge and understanding about a certain subject or situation. Evolution, defined. The gradual development of something, especially from a simple to more complex form. So what is Enlightenment Evolution? The state of giving and receiving greater knowledge as we develop from a simple to more complex human being living on Earth for our soul's experience. Welcome now and join us as we explore our Enlightenment Evolution Hour together. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is simulcast live every Wednesday at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific from the Enlightenment Evolution Hour page, Matrix Minds Facebook page, and the ET Whisperer YouTube channel. It is also redistributed from the Forbidden Knowledge News Network and Conscious Awakening Network. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Gauthier the ET Whisperer, and we are live. We got a little late, and that was because I'm catching up with a dear old friend of mine who is also our guest today, Shelley Young from Trinity Esoterics. Not just a friend to the show, but a friend to myself and Kalina. One of my favorite people in the world, an amazing channeler, a sweethearted human being, and a person that we love very much. And we're going to bring her in and connect with her in just a minute. But as you guys know, we have announcements. For better or for worse, we do announcements, and we're going to have to do them now. So the announcements for the show, I do not have my calendar up. I do know that we're going to have Sandrine Savigny come in the next few weeks here. Paul Selig is going to be on the show in December. I have a show going with him, and I have another couple shows coming up, but I will announce them as they come, and I will share them with all of you as they come. As for the network announcements, the mothership is still MIA, but we're going to find when they come back. I haven't had a chance to talk to SPG, William Piper, in a bit, and he is one of 3 hosts there, along with Lo-Fi Monk, whose birthday was just a few days ago, and SPG's beautiful wife, Sarah Rose. Sierra and SPG have both been guests on the show before. They're great people. So as soon as we know more, we will share more. Also, there is Out There Talk with Valiant himself, an amazing Instagram live every Tuesday and Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. That's 8:59 Pacific. You can go to Instagram live at Out There Talk, all one word, and you will find his show there. You will find archives of his show on his Instagram live Reels page, and pardon me, not Reels, but his Instagram live, and myself, Kalina has been there. A lot of people have been there who have also been part of our show. It's a great show where he talks about all things that are out there. And it's a lovely thing. He's back doing his thing. So check that out, guys. We also want to talk about the ET Whisperer announcements. As you guys know, or maybe if you don't know, this weekend, myself and Tyler Ellison, the channeler of Ryoka, are going to be doing a 2-day workshop this Saturday and Sunday, the same weekend after Thanksgiving, just a few days from here, the 25th and 26th. We're going to be 2 days and 8 hours total from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. That's 1 o'clock p.m. Pacific to 5 o'clock Pacific each day. And we're going to go for 2 days. You can go to etwhisper.com. You can click on this poster, and it will take you to the registration page. Once you get to the registration page, you can sign up directly and be a part of that interactive. So if you want to do it, you only got a couple days to sign up. There's no more signups on the day of. So at midnight the night before is the last moment you can sign up. So if you want to be a part of that, please feel free to do that. We also have the Conscious Life Expo. I'm going to be doing that in February, I believe. I don't have the date on my brain right now, guys, but it is in February, and the picture of that is on the events page on the etwhisperer.com. Our mailing list is where you're going to get the best info for ET Whisperer related things. We're also doing the Sedona Ascension Retreat, which will be in March, and Daryl Ankel will be there. Wendy Kennedy will be there. Sean Swanson will be there. Linda Moulton Howe will be there. Matt Kahn will be there. A lot of really big names in our community and in the afterlife community. The lady who has, and I forget her name, Kalina loves her book, Anita Morjoni or something to that effect. She's going to be there. A lot of great people are there. So Reuben Langdon, our dear friend Reuben Langdon, he'll be there. A lot of cool people. So if you're interested in going to Sedona in March, check that out. Also, I'm saying also, oh yeah, also the ET Whisperer 101 sessions are done. We do have our calendar open in January for the new ET Whisperer types of sessions. Instead of paying for 1 hour of private session with Treb Bor Yit-Ne, we've got a new system called the 3 email question system. And basically, you purchase a questionnaire, and after you purchase it, you get an email with a link. When you get that link, you can click that link and fill out 4 questions. 3 of them will be asked, and a 10 to 15 minute time period to answer those 3 questions, and you'll get the recording back within 24, 48 hours. This makes it easier for me. It makes it easier for people who couldn't afford the one-on-one sessions because, you know, being a 10 to 15 minute slot makes it a lot cheaper. And we have all of that already up and running. We've already had 4 or 5 people signing up for that. But it doesn't start until January 8th. But there are plenty of spaces open on the second week of January. If you're interested, go there. And the channel panel is alive. We already have a date set for it. And that'll be January 3, 4, and 5 in 2025. It won't be next year, but it'll be the very, very start of the year after. So 1 year and a month from now, we're going to be at the Sedona Performing Arts Center in Sedona, Arizona. And we're going to have a lot of really amazing channelers. We're going to be making a huge announcement for the channelers that we have in the next couple of weeks. We're finalizing with a couple channelers right now, and we're going to have an open list of who's going to start there with us, but we're going to probably be doing it for all 3 days and probably have up to 30 or more channelers there. So it's going to be hands down the largest live event we've ever done, and it is going to be an amazing, amazing event. We're going to have vendors there with tables open so people who are selling products can come and sell that there. It'll be like a channeling fair, and it'll be really amazing. We're working on that already. We've got a lot of details worked out, but anyone who's ever done an event knows lots of details to go. Anyway, I've already went way too long with the announcements. I want to tell you guys a little bit about our guest here today. And as you guys know, people who followed the show for over a year, we have had the show a little over a year ago. But for those of you who didn't know, Shelley Young is the owner of Trinity Esoterics, where she has worked as a hypnotherapist, teacher, writer, spiritual advisor, speaker, internationally recognized channel of Archangel Gabriel for the last 18 years. Originally in Ontario, Canada, she is now based in Southwest Florida, where she remains dedicated to raising spiritual awareness in the most straightforward and simple ways possible to embrace their own empowerment. But instead of speaking about her, we will bring her here and let her chat with all of you. Welcome, Shelley. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I always, always, always enjoy our time together.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I feel like it's been too long since we've co-created on something, so my heart's happy.
It is mine too, and I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to switch that over. We're not talking about this anymore. We're talking about this. Okay, so we want to visually align with what we're doing here. Yeah, it's always great to connect with you and talk with you, but it's always nice to create energy with you. And I think looking back at our last interview, I think that was in October last year.
Wow.
So it's been a while. It's been over a year, and that's crazy. It doesn't
Right?
seem like that long. It seemed like it was maybe 4 or 5 months ago or so.
Oh gosh, we were probably just post-hurricane then last time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. I think we might have even talked about that too. You know, I want to start you where I start with all, and I know you answered this last time, but there are people who are listening now who haven't heard the last episode, and they might never go back and listen to the old episode. Can you tell us a little bit about the influences in life that shaped you young? Not necessarily what your story was, because we talked a lot about your story last time, and we'll talk a little bit about it this time, but kind of the influences that shaped and molded you to be the Shelley Young who was the person who could have the story that you have.
Wow, that's a long story. It was a dark and stormy night. No. You know, I grew up, really probably one of the most impressioning things upon me. Well, there were a couple. I grew up in a haunted house. And so from growing up in a haunted house, there's no doubt at all that energy and other beings are real. I mean, once you've experienced it, you know. My grandmother actually was psychic. She had precognitive dreams and she read tea leaves. Little Finnish lady, about 5 feet tall and about 5 feet around. She was almost perfectly round. Bless her heart. She was so cute. And I'm told that she did it very dramatically. I never did get to experience her reading tea leaves, but I do have her cup and her book. So I grew up in a household that was pretty open. I also grew up in a very abusive household, which also led me to really hone my energetic sensitivities. And I hear time and again from people that have walked a spiritual path or stepped into their gifts. It seems a lot of the times almost like a prerequisite, we go through some hard times in order to really develop those sensitivities that serve us so well later, because not only are we very aware of energy, we also have a deep compassion for people from the experiences that we've had. So I would have to say that it would be that combination of factors that led me to be open enough to one day want to explore more.
Yeah, and I remember the last time we actually did talk about your grandmother and quite a bit about that, and that was absolutely amazing. And I recommend for anyone who wants to hear the in-depth story with Shelley to listen to that last one. We're going to cover a little bit of it too, but again, we don't want to go over a lot of things, because from the last time we've talked till this point, there's been a lot of cool new energies and things with you, which we'll get to a little bit. But can we touch on your story? Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of led you into the spiritual path and into the work that you do now with your channeling and healing and energy work and spiritual understanding and hypnotherapy and all the things that you have done?
Yeah. Well, by the time I was, in my early 20s, I could read dice and cards and runes, and I was a meditator. And, I was really, really passionate about all things spiritual. And not much happened for the next 20 years in terms of that opening up more. It was a passion, but not much happened. Until the old proverbial dark night of the soul, where my life tanked out in the most spectacular fashion. And literally from the fetal position on the living room floor, I surrendered to God and just said, I am not qualified to run my life. All I know is I want to help people. And little did I know that I had stumbled into one of the greatest power moves we can ever make, which is surrendering with broad intention. I did it totally by accident, but it moved mountains really for me. Um, as if by magic, I ended up being swept off to hypnosis school in Toronto to become a hypnotherapist. I had never considered that. I'd been a bartender before that, so I didn't even think I was qualified, but I was. And I thought, well, that's cool because, you know, I could help people. And if I become a hypnotherapist, maybe I could do past life regression therapy. And that would be really cool. And along the spiritual lines of what I'd really love to offer. And so off I went. And you have to remember back then, it was 19 years ago. My bio is a little old now that you have. It was 19, almost 20 years now. I'm up in Northern Ontario. The internet was not the way that it was. There was not open information. You know, I was limited to the tiny wee little spiritual section in the bookstore in Northern Ontario, which is like a hard rock mining town. You know, there just really weren't a lot of supports. And I became very, very invested in being able to get answers for myself. I did not like the idea of having to wait until I had enough money or finding someone that could guide me. I wanted answers. And it was from playing with the cool new tool of hypnosis with the desire to get my own answers that I figured out that I could hear this being who identified himself as Archangel Gabriel. I didn't even know there was an Archangel Gabriel. So that was a fun surprise when I found out he was an actual thing. And since then, I learned everything that I teach and share to this day directly from him.
How was that first meeting or recognition? How did it feel? What did you experience? What did that look like?
It was wonderful. I wanted to believe in it. Yeah, I was very new, so I wanted to make sure that I was getting good information. But one of the things that happened, this was really funny. There was another channel, believe it or not, there was another channel that lived in the same town. His name was Mel Brand. Mel has since passed away. Mel was a hard rock miner and became a channel. And at that time, there were only 9 or 10 channels in all of North America, if you can believe that.
Holy moly, what year was that?
Oh gosh, this would have been, well, I knew Mel from, let's say in around 2000, but Mel had been working for years before that, even in the 90s and even the 80s, I would think. So he'd been around for a really, really long time. And his wife made these really amazing bath salts. So I thought, well, I want the recipe to the bath salts. So I would ask what were the elements of the bath salts, and I was being told crazy things like devil's claw and all these things that you would not think are a real thing until they are. So I thought, me and my sister-in-law would write down all of these ingredients and go to the health food store and look at the big wall of herbs, and they'd be real things. And so, you know, that was really wonderful for me because it helped me learn that I was learning legitimate things.
And for our younger people, when you say bath salts, you mean actual bath salts,
yes,
not
yes.
the new thing where people use as drugs and chew each other's face off.
Soak in the bath with essential oils.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for clearing that up.
Sure.
So, you know, it was that. I always laugh because it's not like it happened right away. I used to go into hypnosis and I would be up in the darkness and I would be, hello, anyone? I'd call on every being I could possibly imagine. And I always laugh and say, Gabriel took one for the team. He probably said, oh, for God's sakes, I'll talk to her. I joke. But, you know, what I didn't realize is during that time, as I kept trying, I was actually entering into a space of alignment to allow that communication to start to come forth. So, you know, it was a magical time. I look back on it and I still can't even believe it happened. Like so many amazing, wonderful things happened from that dark night. So if you are in the dark night of the soul, please know that on the other side of it is some really, really great stuff.
Yeah, it is if you can surrender, and that's been something that both yourself and Archangel Gabriel have talked about is surrender, and you talk about it from your experience and learning how to do that, and you channeled a lot about that too. Why is surrender so important? And also, thank you, Aaron, for the donation. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So why is surrender important? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, why is that so important to the spiritual journey itself, or to get through those dark nights of the soul, or to get through anything hard that we're dealing with?
I mean, it's at the base. It's truly at the base of everything. When we surrender, we kind of think of it as like we're giving up, like we're tapping out. And it's like we have it in our head that surrendering is like giving up and being powerless, but it's really not. It's giving up to your guides, handing the reins to them and allowing your soul along with your guidance system to lead you from where you are when you can't figure out the answers into the solutions that exist. So the entire universe works in a system of flow, and surrender is how we enter into the flow. And the flow consists of action phases and lull phases, and it's a very intelligent system that allows us to move forward in the speed and manner that is perfect for us so that we don't get overwhelmed. Where we get into trouble is when our human mind gets in there and thinks we should be doing this and should be doing that, or we get into resistance. That's when the path gets a lot harder. So when you surrender, it's really the greatest power move that you can make. And you can just, it's insane what can happen from a surrender moment, because you are allowing yourself to be guided into the solutions that you could never have imagined for yourself. I mean, truly, there's no way I could have manifested a career being a channel of Archangel Gabriel. I didn't even know there was one.
You didn't even know that was a possible career.
Right? Who would think? I mean, you have to admit, it's kind of a strange career. I never could have created that for myself. On the other hand, if somebody would have said, oh, you're meant to be a channel, I would have said no to becoming a hypnotherapist. And I would have missed out on the tool that allowed me to do that. So that's the beauty of surrendering into the flow. The stepping stones show up that help you find your way to the magic.
Well, I really love that. And I think that that's something that's underestimated a lot. No matter how much spiritual understanding I have, spiritual training that I've had, no matter what my guides have told me, surrender is one of the hardest things for me and for, everyone I know around me when they're in the thick of their emotions and the mental energy, especially when you're dealing with other people that you love. That tends to be the hard one, because with ourselves in our community, it's like, hey, I know what I'm creating. I know how I create it when I'm creating something messed up for myself. I know that I either can fix it by changing something inside of myself, or I know, hey, well, I did this to myself. There's only one person to point the finger at. But for me, my own Achilles heel is when I see a loved one going through hardship and suffering mentally, emotionally, physically, going through something. As a spiritual recognition, there's like, oh, you need to go through this. You need to have this experience so that you can have your next level of growth. But during the moment, it's heart-wrenching. So surrender is really the only way out of that. I have to let you do your thing, and I have to be okay with letting you do that. And I have to let go of what I think I need to control or how I need to adjust it, and just be there and support you and love you. But that's hard. That's real hard.
It is so hard until we really remember that surrender in the dark night of this, like the dark night of the soul, that most people can't find surrender without, is, when we get too uncomfortable to stay the same, is usually when human beings will embrace change. If we didn't get really uncomfortable, we probably wouldn't change a lot.
It's
The
very
beautiful
true.
thing is that you can surrender at any point, but most of us haven't figured that out yet, and we wait until we're in a fetal position on the living room floor. We can't figure out what else to do. So I'm hoping that over time that, you know, a lot more people realize that we don't have to wait until we're in crisis to surrender. But so when we see our loved ones struggling as hard as it is, Gabriel explains to me, sometimes it's faster for them to bottom out to get to the surrender point and get that, you know, springboard of growth than it would be for them to incrementally do it without the bottoming out. It's closer for them to go to the bottom than it would be for them to try and do it energetically a little bit at a time.
Yeah, climbing out of the valley can be a lot harder than letting yourself go to the bottom and get a ride up. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also have to remember that even though it may not look like it, everyone is masterful in their own right. They knew exactly what they were choosing, what they were agreeing to when they came into the body. You know, they're having their experiences, and we're not privy to why they chose them. So I think that it's way more helpful to our loved ones to say, you know, to be encouraging and say, hey, you know, you've got this. You've got this. You know, if we start seeing people in their mastery, then maybe they'll believe in their mastery too, which is not to say that we should let somebody fall flat on their face if they're in crisis. Absolutely not. But I think we should only reach out until they can hold their balance on their own again.
I like that. Yeah, because that's kind of the thing that I feel when I'm right at that level where I just can't handle watching or dealing with watching a loved one go through this hard stuff. It's like, you know what? I just have to be there for them, and if they need me, I'm there. Because a lot of the time, when you feel led to help someone, that's actually a part of their help too. You know, if you're feeling an excitement or feeling an overwhelming drive, like, hey, I've got to reach my hand out here and ask this person, do you need help? A lot of the time, that's why you're getting pulled that way, because both your souls are working together to get that moving for that person.
Absolutely. But the key there is making sure that the help is actually empowering to everyone involved.
Yeah, it's a dynamic of growth and expansion for everybody involved. You know, this is the thing we see in divorces or messy breakups. We see a lot of people who are saying, "Oh, this person did this, and that caused this person to do this and this and that." But realistically, everybody, even people who aren't directly related, if they're a proxy, you know, proximity of that experience, they're there for a reason too. And even though it's uncomfortable to watch and it's rough to see people you love go through things, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. You know, and I, you know, we get into boundaries and all of that, and I found that was one of the most helpful things that I learned from Gabriel was that boundaries are not walls. You know, we get this idea that boundaries are these big walls that we have with barbed wire and a moat with alligators, and it's not that at all. Boundaries really is the point that you can connect with somebody where it's empowering for everyone involved. So it's a connection point. It's not an exclusion point.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I want to bring up a point that one of our listeners did, and I'm sorry, my phone just went off. Our friend Earl from the Matrix Minds over there on Facebook, where we simulcast, says, "I wish I knew how to get a drug addict out of the mess that she has herself in." This is something that's very, very prevalent in our society right now. I've gone through drug addiction at a very deep and horrible way. And it's a living hell for the person who's going through the addiction, but also everyone who loves that person. So how do we use surrender in something like that? I mean, I know the principle's the same, but the intensity level of that and the psychological and physical things that go along with that person in addiction. Have you ever been asked that? Has Gabriel ever been asked that? Is that something you've ever talked about or worked on?
Yeah, having loved ones with addictions is a major theme in my life. I have a lot of experience with that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my husband included, who's in recovery and has been clean for I want to say 6 years now, 7 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
mhm.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a big deal. What I find so fascinating about the alcoholics, the whole AA system, is that it actually really does include surrender. It's exactly what we talk about. People hit their bottom. When it gets too uncomfortable to stay the same, they embrace change. One of the first steps is, admitting that connecting to a higher power, whatever that might be for you, which is really surrender. And, I think a lot of the tenets of the AA system actually go very well with that. The only one that I really don't agree with necessarily, and this is just my own personal opinion, and don't hate and don't send me emails, please, is just can always identifying yourself by the thing that you don't want to be. I would far rather say people say, "Hi, I'm Bob, I'm clean and sober," versus, "Hi, I'm Bob, I'm an alcoholic," when Bob hasn't had a drink in 50 years.
Yes, yes. I love AA, NA, the 12-step programs. They're so good to help someone get out of that deep, dark, bad place.
Yeah.
But in long term, I could only do it for a few years before I started my spiritual journey and realized how much of your internal power you have to give away in order. Now, I know the tenets of the 12-step program say, you must give your power to a higher power of whatever you're choosing or however you see that. So I used to substitute that idea of God with my higher self, like, hey, I'm going to let my higher self figure it out. I'll give up to my higher self and surrender. And there it goes again with surrender. So the idea of surrender isn't bad, but the idea of putting something more powerful than yourself isn't always helpful. And like you said, the identification of yourself as an addict when you're a healer, you're being
Mhm.
healed from that energy. That's also a rough one too. So there's definitely a whole difference in the way that the spiritual journey might want you to see it compared to how going through those programs do. But they're definitely hugely helpful for people who are going through that.
A lot of parallels for sure. Oh, I was fascinated to, no, of course, not all of it, but I was really fascinated to see a lot of the parallels. One of the things I believe now, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was Cryon who said, "If you show me an addict, I'll show you a very powerful light worker."
Yeah.
And the idea is the people that get into addiction oftentimes are either from abusive backgrounds, like I said, which is the springboard to your sensitivities and being of service and that compassion. And they're just such strong empaths many times that they feel so strongly that they don't know what to do with it. And so I think, oh my gosh, we could talk about this for hours, the whole recovery thing and spirituality within recovery. One of the things I think that a lot of people in recovery think is that they're never going to be comfortable again, or they're never going to be happy again, that they're only giving up things and they're not getting something back, that sobriety is going to be a terrible struggle. And,
That's very true. That is the
and
mindset. Yeah.
it is. It absolutely is. My husband and I were out on the boat. We've got a boat. We go boating. We're in Florida. We go out boating where we can make it to the Gulf of Mexico in about half an hour on the boat. And, he was out driving the boat, and he's clean and he's healthy and he's happy. And he was just so present in the moment. And I said, "Man, how I wish you could have seen yourself right now when you were in your lowest point, to show you what was possible through sobriety. If people could only see where they could end up." Rob, if you could only see where you are today compared to where you were, I'm sure it would have given you something to cling to, something so you could see how you could actually not only be sober, but thrive in it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's no way I would have assumed that I could have any sort of happiness. It took God, it took a year of taking it seriously. You know, I was really lucky the way I did because I had an opiate addiction. So for me, quitting, it didn't work for me. So I went into the methadone clinic
Mm.
and I stayed there for a couple of years. That got me off the streets and away from drugs, but I still wasn't taking it seriously. I was still abusing it.
Mm.
And then finally, I started taking it seriously. And when I did, I was able to taper down and then get on another medication that helped me get off that, because the methadone was worse than the morphine and the Oxycontin for sure. And then after that, then I could get clean. And so it took me a while, and it took me a lot of slow, you know, trickling to that place. But during that whole time, from the start process, I'm like, well, you know, I'm not going to be happy. You know, I was happy enough during the time I was coming down because it wasn't so uncomfortable, but it took months and months and months before I had genuine feelings of emotions. There's so many chemical changes and mental changes. But if I would have seen what I am doing now back then, I don't know if I would have even been able to even believe that that was possible.
Right.
Just because, you know, I had such a low opinion of myself. So
For sure. Yeah, that's all part of it. You know, I often see a book one day. I would love to write a book on it, you know, called Joyful Sobriety or something. Just, you know, I would because it's there. It's there. That's where your soul is trying to lead you. So to answer the original question that lovely gentleman sent in, there's really not much you can do. An addict has to want to change.
yep.
And sadly, she's, or I don't know if they said her,
Yeah,
whoever
I
it is,
believe it was a female.
yeah, may have to hit that bottom. They may have to hit that bottom. And because all change comes from within, unfortunately. So we can pray for her, connect with her soul, tell her she's stronger than she thinks. That way, soul to soul through meditation. But ultimately, it's going to be her, and there's wonderful things on the other side of it.
You know, and this is something that sounds harsh, but I'm a big believer in this ideology too. When you're dealing with someone in addiction, sometimes you have to tell them, I love you and I'll do anything in the world I can to help you get clean, but I can do nothing to help you when you're using. I can love you, I can tell you that I love you, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all I can do. If this person's asking for a place to sleep, for money, for any type of favor, you should always deny that until you know that they're serious about getting clean. If you know, and I don't blame most people for not doing that, because people don't know that that will work. Because you know, drug addicts throw tantrums. They're gonna scream and holler and be like, "You hate me, and this is why I use drugs, because no one will support me." You know, all the childlike lash outs and behavior. But the truth of the matter is, if my whole family said, "We love you, but piss off until you're clean," I would have got clean a lot quicker.
Ah, interesting.
And I would have started it for them, but the clean time would have given me an understanding to see it for myself. Because honestly, you can't. I would have resented them and been mad at them and probably got worse for a few months. But with my son, if my son's mom would have said that, I would have done it. And he's the only person in the world I would have done it for. But if I couldn't get help with my addiction from everyone else, then it would have been a quicker process, because I wasn't an independent drug user. I had so many, what do you call it, codependent relationships that allowed me to continue using drugs. And even, you know, they always say you can't get clean for someone else, which is true. But the reason I got clean was for my son too. When I saw that I wasn't doing the things for him that I should have been doing, that I was, you know, my lack of presence there during the day, running out and getting drugs and stuff like that, was actually causing his life to not be as good as it could have been. That's what really, really shifted the gears for me. That was the only thing at that time that could have. And not everyone's the same. You know, regardless, everyone has to get clean for themselves. That's why it will stick in the long run. But yeah, I think telling people no, we're not going to help support you unless it's with love. That's about the only way to do it, you know.
I'm really interested. A family friend was ordered to, court ordered rehab, first rehab he's gone to. I have, God, I pray that they get sober. Of course I do. But I have to wonder, is a court ordered rehab, I feel like they're almost walking into it from a space of resentment and resistance right off the hop because they're being paid to do it, versus getting sober because you are tired and you desperately can't live that way anymore. It's a totally different thing. I mean, in some cases, maybe it does force a bottom for someone. I think that's what interventions are all about, like forcing a bottom for somebody. But I wondered about that. What's your take on that, Rob?
Well, I think you're right. I think it doesn't work for a lot of people, most people, because like I said, there would have been resentment there for me, for my family, and I would have got upset. But for me, relationships were the most important thing. They're not for everybody. And for relationship with someone is not the most important thing outside of the drug and the drug use, it won't work for those people. The dynamic of my son and how much I really love my parents and siblings, that was a powerful force, and that would have done it for me a little sooner. Probably not much sooner, but a little sooner. Every court-ordered or jail sentence that I've seen for people with drugs that puts them in jail for 60, 90 days, a year, they come back out and use. I know that when I was forced away from the environment with drugs through rehab or whatever, I came right back using, like instantly. Like that's all I could think about the whole time until I got back into the area I could get drugs again. So yeah, I don't think any of that will work long term unless that being away from freedom or being away from family, if that's their trigger, because drug issues are caused by trauma. Trauma happens in someone's life and they don't know how to deal with it. So if getting them far enough away from drugs until they can recognize and start dealing with their traumas, it's not going to work. Most drug addicts are just so one street minded. So I think it's a very few versions of people that will probably do well under those circumstances. And usually if they're younger in their addictions, like if they've only been hardcore addicted for 1 or 2 years, but those people who've been doing it 5, 10, 15 years, throwing them in jail, forcing them in rehab, doing drug programs, it's very low success rate. Statistically, they've shown too that it's extremely low success rate for drug courts and things like that compared to people doing it on their own.
Yeah, I would believe that. It's such a prevalent problem. I would love it if you spoke more about this because you've lived it and you've come out the other side of it through spirituality. It's such a powerful story.
I actually just wrote you on the private chat and I said, we need to do a workshop on addiction for sure together.
There we go. Yeah, great minds.
Yeah, we should, because this is something me and you talked about this before. I actually have a friend right now, a couple of friends who are going through addiction, who fought addiction for a long time. And one of them just had a relapse recently. And another one is going through about 120 days or so clean time. And both of them are still struggling. And I'm glad I'm there to lean on and share my own perspective and advice with them. But it's a real thing. And, it's a real thing. So absolutely.
Well, one of the things, that Gabriel's talked to me so much about is that we've come onto the planet with whatever our soul desires to move into empowerment with. So if you have the issue, be it relationships or addiction or any of that stuff, you also have the full ability to heal it. You created it, that experience, because your soul wanted to move into empowerment over it.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And I'm watching Earl, who was the guy who was talking about, and I want you to, Earl, also to know you're going to get a lot of sideways talk from people in addiction. She's going to tell you one thing, and maybe that's the way she feels, maybe not. A lot of the time, addicts will tell you what they think you want to hear, so you'll shut up, and that they can get back to their drug use. So it's not always something that you can trust. When they're sharing things like that with you too. So yeah, it's a very very brutal and difficult thing too. I see we're reaching about the halfway mark too. I could talk about this the whole night, for sure. But I want to ask you too. I know that since last time we were here and the last time we were talking about things, you started having some newer experiences. Me and you always kind of had this camaraderie and kind of like a joke thing, because you always said if you would have met an ET first, you would have not known what to do with that the Archangel was just so much more easy for you to accept and to kind of come into. And with me, I would have freaked out because of my religious stuff as a kid. And I would have been like, oh, hell no. This is, and I eventually connected to Metatron's energy, which helped me open up to understanding the archangels in a whole different way, which has opened me up to the idea of them. And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you're having a similar experience now. You've said you've been connecting more with galactic energies lately. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah. I had, well, I want to say that it was a dream, but I don't really think it was, because, I feel like I was just woke up and was having an experience. And I was in a circle kind of environment, like there was a group, some kind of spiritual group meeting where there were a lot of chairs around. And we were all speaking soul language. I do speak soul language, as a matter of fact, but not often. It's not really my jam, but I can. And so everybody was speaking soul language, and I really felt like it was another world being, and I really felt like it was associated with the color blue. So I did what anyone would do when they have Rob Gauthier's cell phone number. I burned up the text and said, oh my gosh, this happened. What's happening to me? And you said, whoa, it sounds Arcturian to me. And as soon as you said that, I was just washed with bumps. So that was so cool. So I was like, wow, all right, this is interesting. So, a week later, I'm brushing my teeth and I hear clear as a bell, welcome to the Arcturian Council. So I've had, surprisingly, over the last month or two, I've had I've had three new beings show up. Yes, soul language is the same as light language. I'm just seeing the question in the chat. I've had the Arcturians show up. I have had Merlin show up, and he's been teaching me about alchemy. And I had a new archangel show up called Sachiel, who is the archangel of abundance and success. So I've got these three new beings that, I'm learning how to work with, all very different. This is so surprising, when it's been almost all Gabriel for the last 20 years, but it's fun and it keeps things fresh and new. I just haven't had a lot of time to connect with them yet. Although the Arcturians have been teaching me some really interesting energy healing techniques. And I actually use them on my dog. I have a 16-year-old dog who's got heart issues, and she's got advanced kidney disease. We're on borrowed time with her. And I used one of the Arcturian healing. I literally use the blue ray of their healing light. And she's also deaf and blind, God bless her. And she's hearing now. We've all noticed that she's hearing now.
Holy crap.
Which is blowing my mind. And so, and she looks younger. She looks like she's acting much better than she has in ages. Now, I don't know this, you know, I don't know how much longer I could possibly have her for, but it is a marked difference. And to the point where family members that didn't even know I did that are noticing, like, she can hear me. She heard that because she's responding again. So I can't wait to experiment more with it.
That's insane. Yeah, the Arcturian energy is something that is phenomenal. I've only connected to them probably a few dozen times, like different races that are inside of their solar system. I know there's a few races of types of Arcturians, but I noticed that the whole race, like all of them, tend to use light and sound therapy, and they're big on healing, and they're big on working with energy, and they're really big on mixing light with healing, sound with healing, and light and sound together. So I'm really interested to see what comes through with this as you're experimenting. And excuse me, to know that you're healing with this energy is not a surprise, but to hear how great the results are, that's huge.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I've been given a Reiki. She's had all of these health issues for 4 years now, and everything just basically stayed the same. The only thing different was that. But Rob, now that I think about it, early on in my awakening process, after I became a hypnotherapist, and I used to just kind of go into hypnosis because that's the skill I use to go into trance, to connect with beings. I remember this one time, one of the methods I like to use is I just hop in a tube and I take the tube to the angels. And I jumped in the tube and it popped me out, and I was on a ship. And there was a woman guide there. Her name was Ilana. And there was this big screen on the ship. And all I was aware of was her, but I was definitely on a ship, and it freaked me out. It's like, what is happening? I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this Archangel Gabriel business. So I just assumed, she was very loving. She was very beautiful. I felt very safe there. It wasn't that I was afraid. But I wonder if that initial meeting way back then was just a quick intro, because this was coming later.
That makes sense. There are so many things in my own experience that I've had. I always tell people when I go into my own types of trance state, most of the time I'm hanging out with Treb, probably 90% of the time. And the variations of percentages have changed throughout the years. It used to be maybe 80% I would be with Treb. So 90% now, and maybe 8-9% of the time, I'll either be showed something by Treb, or I'll be in a place where I can observe a thing that's happening. And Treb's there, but he's not there next to me all the time. He's either with me energetically, or I can feel him, or I can hear him, but I don't see him, and I just see this thing. And almost every time he's shown me this, anything. It can be, he showed me like old wars that were happening on planets. He showed me like animals and like plant life, and he showed me these different types of beings, just all sorts of crazy stuff. And every time, sometimes it's a couple days, sometimes it's a couple years, I'll eventually hear a description or hear about an experience that someone had, and instantly I'll remember, and I'm like, that's why. And sometimes it takes those years. I know it's not always a linear path, but guides are really good at showing you the things that you need to know. Your higher self is the same way. So do you think that's what this was? Is just, hey, be prepared that this is going to come back up in your life.
Well, I'm going to feel like I fit in better.
Yeah.
If I do another channel panel, I won't feel like I'm the only angel girl.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a question, and I know this is kind of flipping the script a little bit.
I don't mind. I love it.
I was on your Patreon, and I thought I read that you said that you had channeled more than 1,000 beings. Is that so? And
Yeah.
how on earth have you done that? Oh my goodness.
Well, to be fair, I as much as I say that, it's not so much me channeling them directly. Treb and Aridif are connecting the beings through to me, but I do channel them, and most of the time, the biggest amount of number of those come from my old, and now I'm doing it again, galactic weekly channelings, and also the one-on-one sessions with people. There have been times where people will go in to their personal sessions and they'll say, you know, hey, Treb, hey, Aridif, I want to talk to, you know, any guide that wants to talk to me, and boom, an entity will come in, and then they'll say, you know, ask a question about something, and they'll tell them about another race, and then they'll say, hey, can you connect to them? So I think in one session, the most I remember at this point was 7 different beings coming through from 7 different races, and that was just one 1-hour session. And then group sessions, you know, when I used to do those earlier this year, I would have 5 people in the same place at one time, and sometimes they would connect to 2 or 3 apiece. So in one night, you know, sometimes I could get 8, 10 different types of entities or beings coming through at any given time. So it doesn't take long to add up. And, you know, to 2010 till now, I didn't really start doing it, though, until Aridif came around. So the first 3-4 years for the books I did, because the co-author, Jeffers Biscardi, was real curious, and that's how I actually first knew that I could, because I only ever connected with Treb. And he asked Treb, can you bring in these other beings to talk with us? Maybe some other entities that live on your planet? Yeah. Well, can you bring us other entities that work with you? Yeah. So just on the first book, there's probably 7 or 8 different entities, including Aridif. Aridif made an appearance back in that book in 2011 or 12 and didn't reappear until 2015 when I was more able to bring his energy. And it's funny, the first time I channeled him, Treb actually channeled Aridif because there was no way I could. My consciousness wasn't open enough for that yet. So he channeled, and it sounded like Treb with a deeper voice, which was crazy. And Treb sounded a lot different back then than he does now because of my own energy. So the first time I ever recorded him, but I lost that recording. So when I shared Aridif's first channeling, like after he came back, I just took a transcript of the book and put it on a talk-to-text, and it ended up being the only one that was good enough back in 2014 or 2015 was a cappella voice, which is funny because that's the star Treb comes from, and the program was called Capella. And the voice was named English Peter 22. And guess what type of voice that was? It was a very, very posh British accent. So when Aridif started coming through, he actually said, because my energy was introduced to your collective in that way, that was part of the reason he chose to use that voice, like the English accent. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
I mean, all that's a lot to take in, but
well, you know, this reminds me when I first started channeling, you know, I would go into a channeled state, and I would just, so much information would come through me, and I was missing a lot of it. Back then, I was more of a deeper trance channel. Now I'm very light or conscious channeling. So it's gotten much lighter over the years for me. But way back then, the only way that I could really do it was like get into a really deep hypnotic state. And I was missing a lot of information. So I bought myself, this is so many years ago, Dragon Naturally Speaking, the software, because I thought, well, I'm going to put this on, and then it'll get everything and it'll put it into text. This will be great. So I trained the software. You know, you got to read to the software so that it recognizes your voice. And as soon as I started channeling, it did not recognize my voice anymore. So that was like $199 out down the drain.
I remember I got it when it was like a Dragon, I think the version 11 or something. So I first tried it, and it was really not it didn't work when channeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Rookie mistakes.
Well, you know, that's the funny thing. That's the technology has been so amazing too. There are some technologies that do transcription work now for like subtitles for videos. And after playing Aridif a couple times and then fixing the mistakes that they're making, it actually trains through the program the way it's written how to pick it up in the future. And now there's way less mistakes now in picking up what he's saying than there was before. So yeah, it's come a long way. I'm glad we're in this era of time, and it's really helped the ability for people like myself who you know only have one person working on that can actually do something that it used to take 2 or 3 people, you know, 5-10 hours each to be able to put out a 20-minute video, you know.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So, you know, you're working with these ET consciousnesses now, and it's kind of coming into this place where you're starting to work. So I imagine you're just going to keep working with them. And once that comes out in a way that you want to share, have you shared any of those channelings publicly, or has it just been communications personally with these new entities and beings that have come through?
No, I haven't shared anything yet. I
Okay.
am planning on doing a workshop of some of the information that I've had from Merlin, because he's teaching me some really interesting things about alchemy.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is totally unexpected. You know, Merlin shows up. I mean, come on. He's very awesome. Oh, I'm just reading in the comments. Joe is asking if Aridif says adieu. Do you know Gabriel says adieu too, and it does mean it's go with God. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I had no idea what it meant. I knew
Yeah,
it was
it's
a
French.
French.
Yeah.
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 That's amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Well, that's
crazy because
interesting that we both do that. That's often Gabriel will say, "We bid you adieu," like a go with God. Yeah.
yep, that's exactly what an
Oh,
artist says too. Yeah.
so cool.
He always says we bid you adieu for the night or the day or whatever. Yeah, that's crazy. And I always thought it was just him, you know, like as a nod to my French last name or heritage or something. I always
No.
thought that might have been it, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had no idea what I just thought it meant maybe goodbye or
Yeah.
have a good day or something in French.
Well, I guess it does, but yeah, it means
Yeah,
all of
Joe,
those
great.
things. All of those things. So, yeah, back to your question. I haven't really worked with them enough yet. I am not sure whether I'm going to be channeling any of them, or whether it's just going to be Gabriel and me passing on what I'm learning, because really right now I'm just connecting with them in a personal way and learning things as it goes. But again, I haven't had a lot of time. I'm going to have to get a couple of guinea pigs to sit with me and play around with it a little bit and see what comes through. So there's some experimentation that needs to be done, I think, before I'm ready to do that.
Yeah, well, this is something I found out too when it comes to channeling new consciousnesses, beings, entities, or when it comes to people learning to channel. Always the best way is to throw them in a group of people and let people just question. I did that a few times with people who when I did one-on-one channeling classes like 4 or 5 years ago. I used to get groups of people who were trusted friends who wouldn't share the identity or the information and that was on there, and said, all right, can you guys talk to this random person who's practicing their channeling? And they're always like, yeah. A lot of Discord in our Discord area, there's a place to practice channeling with each other there too. So that's always something I highly promote, is people getting together and practicing channeling together. It always comes out the best that way too. You know, I know we did the lightning round last time. I don't know if I want to do it again or not, but I want to make sure we have time too to talk about kind of the new pathway that your work is going on. You've done one-on-one sessions with people for a long time, and you've also done different various things where you were doing monthly things and bi-weekly things and daily readings and for people on the internet, all of this. Some of that's changing now. Can you share a little bit about what kind of is going on with you now with how your workflow comes out to the public?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, one thing that I've done is I've joined Oracle, so I'm doing private sessions through Oracle, which is this amazing website of all channels, and they're out of South Africa, and it's such a high vibrational, co-creative offering. It's just a joy to be part of that. So that's a new thing that I'm doing that's hopefully, going to get me to connect with more people. I've
How do
got,
you spell that by chance?
it's Orykl.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's a really great website. I know that I had mentioned it to you before. I'm really impressed by how they run it. They're so professional, and they just really want to make a difference on the planet. So all of the channels there are vetted, which is really nice. So you can go there and you can be sure that whoever you get a session from, they're the real deal. They've already been thoroughly vetted.
And I'm putting that right now in the chat. For anyone who wants to check out Oracle, it's in the chat room right now. If you're listening back, it is ORYKL.com.
Yeah. I have a podcast now that I've been working on, that I'm really hoping my favorite ET Whisperer can be on very soon.
I am going to be on it for sure. I guarantee I'll be on it.
And that's The Enlightening Soul is the name of my podcast. And I've also got a Patreon group now that Rob's been so helpful. Thank you so much again, Rob. You've been so helpful with that. So
you're welcome. I'm glad it's been helpful.
Yeah, on my website, trinityesoterics.com, I always have free content, but I decided that I wanted to start a Patreon to have current content. So whatever's put out is what I've received from Gabriel for that day. I also will have channeling Q&A there as well once a month. So that's been really fun to put together. So all of these different areas where things are starting to expand in new and different ways. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. It actually, I've been working. I get up and my daughter created this beautiful new office space for me when she was visiting.
Aww.
And it feels so light and beautiful. And I come in here and I'm so enthused about everything that I'm doing that I can work from 9 in the morning till after my husband's gone to sleep, and it doesn't even feel like I'm working. So that's the best, right? When you're in this phase of discovery and doing new things, it's just joyful.
Well, I love the fact that you got that. We've been working on that too since the flood. Well, not we. Kalina has been working on getting beautiful spaces around. It's something that both her and Lily have both needed to kind of thrive and get their energy and mental, emotional energy flowing at its best. And so far, it's done well. That flood really, really put us back a lot financially, energetically, and environmentally. So we're finally getting back to that now too. So what's going on with the Patreon? Can you kind of explain what you're doing there and how it works?
Yeah, so there's 3 tiers. So the first tier is 1111, and you get the daily Archangel Gabriel messages that I've channeled that day. you also get the full length Metaphysical Monday post. So I always have a long writing every Monday about different topics, spiritual viewpoints on different topics. I have a second tier, which is 2222, which allows you to see all of the daily content, plus to attend the Q&A channel, the live channel that I do every month. And then there's a 3333 that allows people to have all of those things plus 10% off of all of the things that I do. And there's some extras in there for the 3333 people. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, I'm just getting my feet wet with the Patreon. You know, I'm putting out some polls to see what people want and to make sure that it's serving people's needs. But it's a lot of fun, and everyone's been so supportive with it all. It's been really heartwarming.
That's amazing. And yeah, the poll function on Patreon is a lifesaver when you're starting it out, because to understand what people want there too is a part of your position. Most people don't really think about that part of it. They're just there to enjoy the work that you're doing and to be a part of that energy. But it's very important to know what people want, so that, you know, you're making sure that they're getting what they're paying for and everything else too. So that's always something that's beautiful. When it comes down to the things that you are doing, you said that are kind of elsewise, in the 3333 tier. What are the things you've got going on right now? I know you've been doing private readings for people with Gabriel, right?
Yeah, I do private readings, and I have about 10 different self-study courses they're actually on sale right now for Good Friday for $111. So they're on a good sale right now. And you can see all of that stuff at my website, which is trinityesoterics.com. But I have everything from, you know, learning how to connect with spirit, how to get, you know, Divine Combination is all about how to get comfortable in that surrender, faith, flow, trust model. I have a program on twin flames and soul connections. You know, there's a lot of different content there. It's all different and all applicable at different times on our journey. So trying to meet the needs.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what do you got coming up for the new year? What do you feel like energetically is coming? Because we're almost at the end of this one. I can't believe we're already almost in December.
I know.
What do you, for you personally, first, let's talk about that. And then what has Gabriel said, or you have intuited, or maybe some of the other beings that you've worked with? Has anybody mentioned about what that 2024 is going to look like?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Gabriel's been really on it. I did the most amazing session today with a client where he talks so much about the energies that we're moving into. And of course, I don't remember half of it because it's really hard to remember when you have a channel session after you're done. It's like a dream, it's gone if you don't write it down. So I've even asked the client if she would mind, you know, putting it through a voice to text program so that I could get some of that information back. But he's been talking so much about this solstice is really, really, really important. Getting comfortable with the concept of ease moving forward, ease as an actual true potential for you. I think a lot of us have been thinking that, you know, ease is just not something that can happen on the spiritual journey because the energies have been a lot. I would expect that we'll see the energies get kind of another wave of intensity as we move up into the December solstice, December 21st solstice, and into the new year. And then I'm hearing a lot about fast forward movement. I'm hearing a lot about instant manifestation, where we're going to have to really pay attention to our thoughts because we're going to be having, you know, results a lot faster than what we're used to. Getting comfortable in being an autopilot, knowing that if you've been a conscious creator, that's a good place to be. He's talked a lot about that. He's talked about the fact that we're in what he calls the day of reckoning, which is actually not even the day of reckoning. It's actually a period where we're really getting back what we've, it's the day of reckoning. I know it sounds like, oh, it's Judgment Day. It's really not. It's just the energetic reaping of what you've sown.
Yeah,
And
that sounds scary to people when you hear the word
yeah,
reckoning, because it sounds kind of biblical.
it does. And when I heard those words, of course, the first thing I did, as anyone would do, is not text Rob this time, but run to the computer and, Google. And it was, it was really, it's just about the natural causes and effect. And that's how people learn. And so he was talking, about, some people may be hitting that dark night of the soul, where those of us that have really been doing our work, well, we've been doing all of this work for a reason. And we're going to start to see the results of that work. And I think a lot of us are feeling like, oh, I feel like something's going to happen. I can't put my finger on it. And you can't tell if you're feeling anxious or excited or what it is that you're connecting with, but we kind of feel something coming. And I think that we're going to start having some really good breakthroughs as we move into the energies of 2024. As for me personally, I would like to just continue. I've got a couple of books I want to write. The Divine Combination, that's really on my short list. I also would really love to create some kind of a program that's moving people that are out of service with the military into service in a more spiritual way. I'm feeling really passionate about that. So that's something that really has my attention right now.
Well, I've met a lot of people who are in that transition now. They found their spiritual journey at the end of their deployment or the end of their contract in the military, and they're getting out. Why are you feeling that? Do you know someone personally who's going through that, or is that just something you picked up?
Well, it started off, speaking of autopilot, I don't know. I've been in the United States. I've been living here for 5 years now. In Canada, telling servicemen, thank you for your service. That's not really something that we do in Canada. Number one, you don't see a lot of servicemen in Canada. It's just not something that we do. There are, of course, we do have a military, but you just don't see the servicemen a lot, at least not where I lived. So that's just kind of not a habit that we got into. And so I was shopping and I saw a man with an older gentleman with a Korean War hat on, and I just autopiloted and I went right up to him and I said, "Thank you so much for your service." And he lit up like a Christmas tree. He was just so happy. And he said, "Oh, my dear, you're very welcome." And then,
so amazing.
I've seen this other man the other day where I was, again, wearing some kind of thing indicating that he was a veteran. And I was like, "Thank you for your service." And he said, "It was an honor." And so this really got me thinking about service and how our servicemen have gone to war for the very same, for many of the ideals that are spiritual in nature. For
freedom of choice, freedom of to be free.
Exactly. And so and I've been just really sitting with the energy of this, and I realized that if these older gentlemen, God love them, are still wearing their Korean veteran hats, they're really identifying themselves through that role of service. And then I realized that we all identify ourselves through our service. I think our service is our purpose. And so then I started thinking, oh my gosh, all of these people that are coming out of the military are probably feeling very lost. I mean, let's just take head injuries and trauma and all of that out of the equation. But I think they really don't know what to do with themselves because they identify themselves to their service. And now what do I do?
That's very profound. My dad was a 20-year Army vet. Through my younger years before we moved to Michigan, I had been all over the world with him. you know, I lived in what was then West Germany.
Mm.
And I lived in South Carolina, West Virginia, until we moved to Michigan when I was about 4 or 5. So I was real young. I don't remember. I only remember like 1 or 2 things from Germany and a couple things from South Carolina. But it was a very potent experience, and it really, was a crazy thing to see my dad transform out of the military. Like you said, he was lost. He loved the military. He said if it was up to me, I would be here till I died. He just so much loved it, and he identified with service, and he never saw active war, even though he did serve during the Vietnam War. He was in Korea when that was going on. But he loved the idea of it, just being there. He very much identified with that. And it was hard for him. He went through a lot of transitional phases, and I remember him growing his hair out, you know, like a hippie again, because he couldn't participate in the hippieisms of the 60s and 70s. So it was really crazy, and but it was good, and it was a journey. And I'm sure if he would have had some kind of support there too, it would have been helpful. But you know, a lot of the veterans who are coming out now have been part of Afghanistan wars, and even outside of combat, there's just a structure in that life that's so appealing to them, and they come back. And you know, I agree with you that the whole thing of going to someone you see who has service Vietnam or service Korea War or whatever, you don't see many World War II left, but going up and saying, "Oh, you know, thank you for your service." This was something that was done all the time when I was a kid. You thanked people for putting their life on the line so that you could have that freedom. And now, you know, it's not so appreciated as much anymore.
Well, it's not. And, you know, I think of Rob, you know, what would you and I do if we couldn't do what we do anymore?
Yeah, yeah, I've thought of that a lot, and I don't know,
I mean,
because
we
the only interest
identify.
I have
Yeah. We
are still
identify through our service. It's what our soul wants us to do.
absolutely. I've always told people this. I am a father, a husband, and a channeler, and that's really me. You know, that's Rob.
Yeah. So I mean, what would I do? I mean, I can't even imagine what my life would look like if I didn't do what I did. So, you know, I feel like there's almost like a bridge that maybe can happen where people can transition out of the military into a new type of service, you know, and where it takes those initial core values that mean so much to them. Because I think the vast majority of people really don't want war, but they thought that was the only way to to protect the ideals that are so important to them. And what
Sure.
if we could create a way for these veterans to find service in a new way that still honored those ideals that mean so much to them?
That is beautiful. That's a beautiful concept, and I know Nadia, who's here. Her husband served, and maybe she served at one point too, or met him during the service and has been. But I know she works for like the commissary place, the PX or P, whatever branch it was. I can't remember, but and I know that I've met a lot of either active military towards the end of their thing or people getting out. So I think that would be huge. Um, the transition of service, you're right, and service in one form of another, finding that it is a huge part of our identity. And like I said, I can only think of a couple things I would even consider as a possibility of doing without that. But all of it relates to service, because people who are doing things like the military, like channeling, like energy work, like healers, their whole shtick is like, hey, I want to help people. I
Yeah.
want to do something for people. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. I had a session the other day, and it was a journeying session, which is a healing process that Gabriel has given me that's just so incredibly profound. She had heard from somebody else that had such great results from it that she came in. And it turned out that, you know, she was a Marine in this lifetime and had many military lifetimes before. And so we were trying to create like a new empowered declaration for her. And we were working with different words. And she had trouble with the word peace. And I found it so fascinating because for her, peace is a compromise. And I get that, you know, when warring nations come to peace, everybody's got to give up something. So it shocked me that even somebody could have a different viewpoint of peace.
That is fascinating. Yeah, I never even considered that, but you're right.
Yeah,
How
I mean, I just
many
thought peace
people
was
were
peace, right?
right? And you heard people all over social media and all over the news so upset when we withdrew from Afghanistan when the war was over. They were so upset. And I know a lot of that was political. They didn't like the way it was done or whatever, but there were genuinely people like, no, the war's not done yet, you know?
Yeah. So I just thought like there's so many layers and nuances that people come out of that type of service with. And I think that if they were willing to leave their families and fight for their countries, my God, what a difference they could make once they're done too.
Yeah, the personnel. See, this is funny because you're talking about these archetypes repetitively of people who transition and become some of the best people I've ever known. Some of the greatest people I know are recovered addicts. Some of the greatest people I've ever met were former soldiers. These are all archetypes that have gone through levels of trauma or levels of service and levels of test of real hardships in life. Because, you know, being in the military might be easy after you get started, you know, after you're in for a few years, but it's not an easy thing
No,
in
my
general.
goodness, no.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's something there. It's taking on form, but it's really got my interest. So these are some of the things that I want to focus on now, creating new content, finding new ways to serve to make my soul happy. You know, Gabriel once said to me not long ago, he said, just as we thank people for being of their service, there will be one day that people will come up to people such as myself, the channels and the light workers and the way showers and all of us that have been really, you know, working hard on our own evolution and saying the very same to us. Thank you for your service. And it's interesting to me how people would even identify us. I don't know what that means, but it stuck with me. And that's an interesting thing that I ponder often as well.
Well, this, you know, I believe that very much. You know, I'm sure just like myself, you have a lot of people who you've worked with personally who've come to you and told you the work that you do with them was drastically altering their life and their path. So yeah, I can see that on a larger scale. You know, this is something that's funny too. I've always laughed because, you know, people are like, well, why do you teach channeling? Isn't that a bit counterproductive for you? And I was like, what do you mean? You know, well, if you teach people how to channel, they won't come get sessions. I was like, first of all, I've given sessions to tons of channelers. That's not necessarily a thing. But secondly, you know, even if they do, so what? You know, someone will want to learn to channel and be able to, and it makes the whole place better. You know what I mean? So that idea of needing to have a steady flow of people who are, you know, uneducated in what you teach so that you can teach them, that doesn't work out. If you're doing that, you're not teaching them too well if there's no one who graduates. You know what I mean? So
Isn't that the truth? Exactly. We're here to empower people.
Yeah.
Do for themselves, not to have a dependency upon us. And then they're still going to come because it's hard to get your own information. And then they're still going to come to us just for confirmation, not to tell them, but to let them know that they're on the right track. So, I mean, yeah, I understand how it's so funny because traditional business models never work with the spiritual thing. It's completely different because anyone that works in this will be, there's more than enough for everybody. You know? So I don't know, interesting times.
Well, there's a lot of that energy that we've created on Earth through the systems we dealt with that make people feel that there is an abundance, that there's not an abundance of love, not an abundance of you know, commonality, not an abundance of friendships and connection and money and services and all. But there is. I mean, holy moly, from the time I started channeling publicly to the time now, the amount of channelers that exist in the world that are publicly out there channeling is just drastically shifted. I mean, I just talked about this with Jeff Mara. That's the other announcement. I'll remember to tell you guys in a minute. Let me write that down so I don't forget it. Jeff Mara. Jeff Mara. Okay. But I talked about, oh my God, I forgot where I went. The whole Jeff Mara thing. Do you remember what I said? What I was saying? Yeah.
I'm in a shifted space. I'm so nonlinear.
No. And I said maybe 3 words anyway, so I don't know if anyone could extract. But
we were talking about the different systems. And you were talking about, you know, like I was saying that there's more than enough for everybody, and you were talking about the systems and the many channels that are now out on the planet.
Oh yeah. When I actually talked about this in depth when I first got there, there was literally just maybe a dozen and a half channelers on YouTube at all. Like that's it. So when I started uploading videos on YouTube, I was surprised to see the lack of channeling out there, because that's how I had to find my bounce back when I first started. I was like, oh my God, what's going on with me? Oh, someone said this. Oh, what is this? They're a channeler? They're, oh, whoa. You know, so all these different things brought me awareness to what channeling was. Even though I had seen channeling done through mediumship and direct mediumship, I never had a reference for that name or anything until after I found the Jane Roberts stuff, which was saying the same thing Treb was telling me. So, you know, I mean, I went through a miniature list in my brain. There was not a lot. Now there are literally thousands and thousands on YouTube alone. You put in the word channeling and you could scroll for days on the results from that one.
Yeah, it's incredible. But, you know, it shows the, you know, how exponentially once something starts having momentum, how fast things start moving. And I mean, that's exactly where we are with the shift.
Absolutely. Sorry, it took me a second. I had to unmute my mic. But absolutely. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. It's already to the time I didn't want to do the lightning round again because we did that once and we already kind of got a list of your favorites. So I do recommend anyone who's wanting to go back to that thing, the first episode that me and Shelley do, please do. And I also want to give you an opportunity before we go to share with people how to find you. I know the website's in the description and stuff, but anything that you might have coming up. But before we get to that, I just want to say, you know, I know you know my heart, and I know that you know my appreciation for you, but me and Kalina love you with all of our heart. You're legitimately one of the nicest, kindest, most loving people we know. And you legitimately have that deep, deep, deep desire to help people. And your channeling is so beautiful. And I'm such a channeling snob. So when I say I like your channeling, it's actually a bigger compliment than you think. So thank you for being you. And thank you for bringing your beautiful gift to us.
Oh, you know how much I love you. And you have this uncanny knack of whenever I'm in a crisis with my career, just showing up at the perfect time to rejuvenate me and reset me. And I just love you so much. You are such a beautiful example of the divine masculine. And I love you and I love what you do. And just, it's a joy to be around you. And, you know, I love Kalina as well. We can't leave Kalina out. She is an absolute delight.
She is, and you are. And thank you for the kind things. I really bonded with you in the backstage of our channel panel, and me and you talked for 20, 30 minutes. I can't remember who was presenting, but we were just back chatting and hugged it out, cried it out a little bit.
We
And we
did. We cried.
very, very special moment. And I was so happy that you shared with me and that we were able to talk.
Oh my God, that picture. I have a picture of you and me at channel panel, and it's one of my very favorite photos of all time. It just, I loved it. It was magic. That day was magic. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for me.
Oh my Lord. Thank you for what you've done for us too. And, you know, we'll make that magic again. You know, I'm talking about the channel panel coming up, and of course, I don't want to announce anyone coming, but I guess we can sneak announce that there's a very good chance that if you can make it work out on your end, that you can join us there, because I think it would be great to have you there too. And Kalina and I already know that you're coming to this one as long as you can make it and as long as you want to be there. So we definitely want to make that magic happen again. This is going to be a really special. I'm so excited about this one coming up. Next year is so full of magic for all of us. I don't think I told you this, but I'm flying out to Virginia in just 4, 5, 6 days. The weekend, we're doing the event this weekend, myself and my friend Tyler. But after that, I'm flying out to Virginia for 5 days to shoot a TV series called The Onironaut that we're doing, and it's going to be really amazing. So this whole next year is just full of great stuff for all of us, and it's gonna the year after that will begin in a magical way with the channel panel. It's gonna be so huge and so amazing. So I'm looking forward to it, and I look forward to spending more time with you. And I'm serious. We should really talk about doing some workshop or some coursework for addiction. I think it would be powerful with both of us doing that.
Oh my gosh, I would love to. I'm there.
Okay, well, let's do it then. We'll do it, and we'll announce that to you guys whenever we do. I also want to make this little bitty last announcement that I forgot to tell you guys just a couple of hours before we jumped on. An interview I did with Jeff Mara on the Jeff Mara Show was released. It is probably one of my favorite interviews I've done. If you're newer to our channel here on YouTube, the ET Whisperer, or just new to our show in general here at the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, you might not know my whole story. A lot of you did find your way here from Interview with Extra Dimensionals. And I talked about my story pretty in depth there, probably a little more than I did on the Jeff Mara Show. But I did talk pretty deeply, more deep than I have in a long time, about my story. So if you want to know that there, and we talk about a lot of really deep and interesting topics, you can go check out that. That's the Jeff Mara Show. And if you're watching back on YouTube, on Matrix Minds or the Enlightenment Evolution Hour Facebook pages, you can go back to the chat and open it, and you'll see that link right in the comments right now. It's a really great show, so if you guys are interested, go check it out. And Jeff Mara is an amazing guy. I really got to know him in the communication between this, and he's a really interesting and great guy, and he's got a lot of cool guests on his show too. So check out the Jeff Mara Show, check out my episode, the link's right there. Thank you, Shelley, for coming tonight. I really appreciate you being here as always. I love you, and I appreciate the time that we spend together. So I just want to thank you for coming tonight, and I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a joy to connect.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you guys. I saw how active you were in the chat, and this has been kind of a thing with me lately. I get so engaged in the conversation, I can't always watch all of the chat. So I don't. Thank you, Joe Grace. I appreciate that. So I don't see all of your comments, but I do go back and reread them when I get an opportunity to. And like Joe Grace says, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like the episode if you liked it. If you're not subscribed, you can. It helps our channel grow, and our channel has been growing hugely in the last year, and it's because of you guys. Your guys' comments, your thumbs up, all of that really helps. Go check out Shelley Young's YouTube if you've never been there. The link for that is in the description. Trinity Esoterics is the name. You can see how it's spelled on the poster under Shelly's beautiful picture and name on the poster. Type that in and you'll find all the social medias, including YouTube. She's got amazing stuff over there too, guys. So anyway, we're going to end the show, guys. I will be back here next week at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't remember who I'll be with, but it will be announced before we get there, I promise. And if you're going to come to our event this weekend, let me show that poster one more time. Go to etwhisperer.com/events. Click on this poster. It'll take you to registration. We don't have a ton of people coming, so if you do come, you will have a much higher chance of getting your questions answered. We are doing Q&A channeling both days. I will channel Aridif for an hour and take Q&As live from people who are there in the chat. And Tyler will also be channeling for an hour. And Tyler and I will also be teaching some techniques and things like that, and helping use gratitude as a tool for your spiritual growth and expansion. It's a really big one. We will sell the recording afterward, but being there live gives you the opportunity to ask the questions. Anyway, guys, we've run so far over tonight, and I always do that when I have guests that I really love on. So I'm going to shut my face hole and let you guys get on with your day. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again, Shelley.
Thank you. And thanks to your community. They're wonderful.
Oh, they are. They're amazing. So thank you guys so much for being here. We love you guys. We'll see you next week on the other side. Good night, guys.
Night.